feedback that's going on, please be mindful of turning off your mics. So let's get started. Welcome. I hope you're all well and thriving in your physical, emotional, and mental spaces. I'm Sonia Tandon, history professor and current chair for the Humanities Enrichment series. Thank you for taking time off from all your busy schedules to attend our discussion on mental health in the age of COVID-19. This event is organized by the Humanities Enrichment series, which serves as a platform for discussions and conversations on a diverse spectrum of topics. Today's panel discussion is also very special because it's co-sponsored by the Courageous Conversation series. At Forsyth Technical Community College, equity is grounded in a culture of belonging. We will intentionally design the college experience to ensure that each learner receives what they need to be successful. In keeping with this value, the Courageous Conversation series was started in the wake of the pain caused by the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and to affirm our commitment to our Black students, faculty, and staff, and to act on the national calls of justice locally. Since this cannot be a one-off conversation, Courageous Conversations has partnered with Humanities Enrichment series to continue the conversations to acknowledge real-life experiences of pain, distress, and even hopelessness, and support each other to make progress on difficult subjects such as race, privilege, bias, stereotypes, and ethnicity. This event is unlike our past events due to it being 100% virtual. We are using Collaborate to host the event, and I would like to give a shout out to John Howell, director from CTL, for setting it up for us and recording it so we can have it available for those who are unable to attend. This recording will be uploaded on TechLink, as will all the resources that our wonderful panelists are sharing with us today. Additionally, John is also our timekeeper, and he will be monitoring the chat box when we have our Q&A round. I will now introduce our moderator for today's event, Walter Allen Brickhouse, adjunct instructor at Forsyth Technical Community College. He also teaches in Winston-Salem State University and Guilford Technical Community College. He has 30 years in radio and broadcasting sales and management experience. Walter graduated from Norfolk State University with a BA in psychology. He acquired his master's in child and adolescent psychology from Chicago School of Professional Psychology. He is currently seeking a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. Walter is a lifelong learner, I might add. His mantra, "Do not allow someone else to define who you are," so resonates with me. I will now ask Walter to introduce our wonderful panelists and outline the format of today's panel discussion. Thank you. Over to you, Walter.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to moderate this significant and impactful topic. I am appreciative of you asking me to serve as the moderator. I'd like to introduce our panelists. There are 4 of them. I'm going to introduce them in the order that they will present. And so that way, once they start presenting, they would just go from one to the other. Then after they present, we will have a Q&A. I already have at least 10 questions from students that have already pre-sent questions that we will certainly, hopefully, be able to get to. But at this time, what I'd like to do is start with our first presenter, and that is Professor Rebecca Howell. She is the department chair for social and behavioral sciences. She has been working in psychology and the mental health field for 25 years. Professor Howell taught psychology and worked as a counselor before working at Forsyth Tech. She currently teaches abnormal psychology. One of her goals is to help students understand the different disorders and help decrease the stigma associated with mental health. Professor Howell's favorite topics are stress management and taking good care of yourself both psychologically and physically. Our second presenter is Professor Georgette Chen. She has a communications journalism degree. Her desire was being a television anchor in North Carolina. While she was sitting and waiting for ABC Studios to call, her mother suggested substitute teaching. She enjoyed it and decided to return to school for teacher's education. She taught in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools for several years before joining Forsyth Tech as an adjunct. She teaches full-time in the developmental department, now student academic success department. She can be found smiling and taking.
We are calling this technical difficulties. We are going to wait for a couple of seconds for Walter to sign back in, and I hope Jan Howell is kind of figuring how to make this work. But yes, he was, well, we were definitely in the process of introducing our presenter, Georgette Chin, and I guess I need to go ahead and take it on from there. So I don't have the order of the presenters. However, I'm definitely going to go ahead and say that our next presenter is Kenyatta Richmond, and she is the director of Shugart Women's Center. And I will certainly wait for Walter to add information about Kenyatta. However, Kenyatta is she's amazing, and she specializes in domestic abuse. She has a varied experience. She's currently in a doctoral program.
Random fun fact about.
There we go. Go ahead, Walter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Random fun fact about Professor Wright. He has a hairless dog. Yes, she wears a wardrobe of sweaters for colder weather. He's a big sports fan. Green Bay Packers for life. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, that is our panelists, and we will start with Professor Rebecca Howell.
All right, welcome. I'm glad to see you guys are all here. I'm going to take the first 5 or so minutes, and I'm going to just talk about some of the impacts that COVID has had on mental health. So I'm going to share you some basic slides here that are going to have some information. I'm certainly not going to read all of this to you, but I want you to see that 53% of the people that were reported in this study have had negative impact due to worry or stress over the coronavirus. 36% have had difficulty sleeping, 32% have had changes in their eating habits, 12% have had issues with substance abuse, and 12% have reported that they're having worsening in their chronic health conditions. And I am betting that most of you have also had some of these things happen over the last little bit. These are the major people that are at the highest risk for having issues during this time, and I'll just mention a few of these. These are our frontline workers, the elderly, children, teens, people with prior conditions, both mental health and medical, those with disabilities, anybody taking care of any of those folks, as well as those that are socially isolated, those that are from racial and ethnic minority groups, especially those with low socioeconomic status or those that do not have specific supports in place, and of course our homeless population, as well as those who have lost their jobs during this pandemic. So just a couple of quick statistics for you, and we will go forward. Anxiety and depression is increasing during the COVID pandemic. So if you see here, this goes from May through July, and you can see that the numbers for anxiety, depression, and having both anxiety or depression have increased as we continue to go through this. And that's probably not going to change anytime soon as people continue to be more and more worried. And just to show you, this is showing the impacts of social isolation on mental health. And if you see the top one here is talking about those sheltering in place versus those who are not, the more isolated you are, the higher factors that you're going to see with issues of mental health. This one is looking at those that have prior health conditions. And of course, you're going to see that those that have poor health are having a higher impact. They're up to 62% of those that have a worse impact than those that have regular or excellent health in the process of this. All right. And then I want to share with you guys some just basic signs and symptoms of stress and anxiety and things to think about, things to look out for if you're having some of these symptoms. We will talk at the end of this about how you can get some help. But certainly things like insomnia, low energy, changes in appetite, issues with muscle cramping, stomach issues. This affects so many different people in so many ways. Increases in colds. And of course, this makes you more susceptible to COVID if you were to come across that. Feeling overwhelmed, feeling anxious, feeling moody, changes in appetite, depression, loneliness, isolation, increase in drug use. I could go on and on and on. This is just listing some of the possibilities that you may see out there. So it's real, and people are having major, major struggles with this. This one is showing you just some of the major warning signs. These are signs that people are not okay. Here are the major symptoms of depression. If you're seeing any of these symptoms, these get to be slightly more severe. So this is that sad or irritable mood, the loss of interest in things you used to want to do, changes in appetite or body weight, and these are significant changes, 30, 40, 50 pounds sometimes, difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much, loss of energy, feelings of worthlessness, feelings of guilt, difficulty concentrating, or of course, if we look over here, thoughts of death or suicide. And if you see the suicide warning signs here, this is making suicidal threats, feeling hopeless, feeling like there's no future, isolation, irritability, drastic changes in mood or behavior, talking about death, engaging in major risky behaviors, engaging in self-harming types of behaviors. All of these are huge warning signs. And again, we're going to give you resources at the end of what you can do with all of this, but pay attention to these because these are significant. So I'm going to touch just very briefly on a few really good, healthy ways to cope with stress. And again, we're going to come back to this at the end here. So take care of yourself. This is one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself. Get plenty of exercise. Drink your water. Be sure to take a shower today. I've given you a gold star if you took a shower today. Avoid excessive alcohol and drug use. Eat healthy. Take some deep breaths. Get up and stretch. If you're staring at screens too much, make sure you take quick breaks. Take care of your emotional health. Be sure you laugh. It is okay to joke. This will eventually be over. Until then, you can have as much fun as you possibly can. Allow yourself to have feelings. Spend some time in nature. Go out and do something fun for yourself. Pick up one of the hobbies that you used to do. Read, write, paint, sing a song, even if you sing off key. Get your nails painted. Whatever you like to do, do it and enjoy yourself. Even if you aren't getting to do the things you used to do, take a moment to enjoy those silver linings. Look for the small things and find ways to feel positive. And above all else, connect with other people. Call each other, talk to each other, hug an animal, hug a friend. I know we're not supposed to do that during social distancing, so air hugs work really well. But do what you can to reach out to others and keep yourself from being isolated. And take breaks from watching TV, take breaks from news stories, from media, any of those things as often as you need to. It is super, super important for you to practice good, healthy stress management. At the end of this, I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to have the daily self-care strategies that I actually use in my positive psych class. Just showing this to you here. Anybody that wants it certainly can reach out and we will send it to you. And then we're going to share mental health resources with you at the end. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our next presenter. Please reach out with any questions. You are welcome to ask anything that you want, and we will make sure we get you to the right place. I'm so glad you guys are all here.
Hello, everybody. I'm Georgette Chin. Let me see. Since Becky already mentioned isolation, I'm going to talk about extreme isolation. The old adage is you can be in a room full of people and still not feel a part of the crowd or comfortable. You can still be isolated and you have people all around you. Um, Extreme isolation happens to everybody at some form of life. There's gender isolation, male and females. Um, Years ago, women would, if there was a woman who got a position in a company, excuse me, in a company full of men, she would feel extremely isolated because she was not one that maybe dealt with sports or played golf, and she would be that person that was isolated. More than likely, she would be a mother. She would have no one to talk to understand her plight. Also, we have gender isolation, and that's between men and women. Statistics show that men have a higher isolated feeling, emotional feelings than women. And the only reason that I could research and come up with is because we like to hear the strong, silent type. We don't want men who cry. We don't want men that show their feelings. So most of them hold it in. We as women, we talk, we chatter, we have friends, we enjoy each other. So we don't feel quite as isolated. But of course, in any situation, you can be isolated. We also have the race isolation. Back in the 60s, during the segregation period, the government was happy to put maybe 5 African American students in a high school of 200 or 300 European American students with no one to talk to, no one to share anything with, even their teachers. You can feel isolated today. It depends on who you see that looks like you, who feels like you, that you feel a connection to. Also, you can be isolated in your own community. If you're new to your community and you don't know your neighbors, most people know their neighbors on each side of them, but they don't know the neighbors on the other side of them. So you can also be isolated with that as well. We have age isolation. And with that, most people feel a little more with the elderly. Um, if an elderly person has experienced loss of their partner, they could be placed in an assisted living position with a situation that they don't know anyone. They may feel extreme isolation. Today we're talking more about college students. So I'm trying to hit everybody. College freshmen are our big ones that we're trying to look out and touch on. College freshmen are so different than being a senior in high school. You've left from being the top person down to the bottom. Especially colleges that have dorms. You live in a dorm with no one to look over you. All of a sudden, at 18, you're the adult. A lot of freshmen feel completely isolated. They don't know that they would feel better to become close to the teachers, to join clubs and groups. They miss home. They miss their mom. They miss their dad. Everything falls on them without any kind of supervision. Um, Freshmen have to learn the different ways of making friends in classes, joining different groups and social situations, to get out there, put themselves out there, not to be completely isolated. Of course, it is different during the COVID. That's why social media has a big part to play, but it's not the only part you can play. You still have to have that face-to-face contact some kind of way. This is when you go back and you think about those high school friends, and you reach out to them. You know them. Reach out to new people, not just necessarily on the computer, but call them. Make sure you have lunch with them. Sit outside. Have lunch with other people, new people. Go into study groups. Go to the tutoring center. Talk to your teachers. One student told me recently, I don't know how to talk to my teachers. Well, we're human. Talk to us. Even if you need to ask the teacher in the collaboratory, may I speak to you after everyone leaves? The teacher will be more than happy to sit and talk with you. Tell the person about your family. Tell the teacher about your grandparents. Matter of fact, go to the grandparents. Do some Skype calls. Don't completely leave yourself isolated. Through my research, I also found a new app. It's called Nod, Nod. It's under Education, Health, and Welfare. It's from Hope Lab and Grit. They talk, the first thing with this app, which was brand new to me, it was personally designed for college students who felt isolated. The first thing they will ask you is to name your school. So they will be able to get you in contact with counselors and teachers, tutors, and maybe other students. This is when social media is a great place to start. But it also talks about eating well, sleeping, fitness, doing exercises in your classes. It just so happens that we don't have dorms here at Forsyth Tech. So we still have a little bit more mobility than maybe some of the four-year universities. And these are also good for us as well. Try to meet people as much as you can. In my collaboratory, which used to really bother me, my students would come in and they would cut off their cameras. You want to see people's faces. I don't particularly ask them to do that because they're grown or they're considered grown, but it's a good way to get to know people. You have to see their faces. Again, this new app is for direct college students. It's called Nod, Nod, and it's under Education, Health, and Welfare. Thank you. Let me see. Our next person is Miss Richmond.
Thank you, Georgette. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Miss Richmond, and I'm going to talk to you all about mental health and how it impacts COVID-19 and the mental health impacts on women. Thinking back to last year, who could have imagined that we would be right here where we are this day and this time? We've had such drastic changes in our lives, everything from our basic daily routines to milestone events in our lives, and that's been major for many of us. John, you can go to the next slide. The impact of COVID-19 on mental health, it has been far greater than that of which Americans experienced during and after 9/11 and the Great Recession. And many of you may not have been born when 9/11 happened, but that was a major event in our country, and it caused a lot of stress, anxiety, and depression for many Americans. And to think how major that was, this pandemic has had a greater impact. 90% of adults surveyed are experiencing frustration and worry that is directly impacted by COVID-19. 83% of women compared to 36% of men are experiencing depression as a direct result of COVID-19. For many women, this change has been major because we are typically the nurturers in our households. We're the ones running the errands. We have daily tasks, and all of that came to a grounding halt back in March. 53% of women compared to 37% of men said that COVID-19 has had a negative impact on their mental health. Next slide. So mental health challenges of women during COVID-19. We have experienced some stress, social isolation. Women are so used to being a part of organizations and clubs, the soccer mom, the cheerleading mom, getting the groceries, running the errands, and now all of that has come to a new normal now that we're going back into different phases. However, at the beginning of this pandemic, we were only going to the grocery stores. We weren't doing anything. We didn't see friends, and we're still not really seeing friends, family members, or what have you. So we're being isolated from our family and other people. Fear of the unknown, because we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know how helpful this vaccine is going to be, if it's even going to be successful for us. Anxiety, just anxiousness about what's to come, not knowing, again, with that fear. And then depression. There are many women who are experiencing abusive relationships. And prior to the pandemic, they had an outlet. They were able to leave home, go to work, go to school, or wherever that is. And now they are at home, many with those abusers. And during this pandemic, the number of women experiencing domestic violence and some form of intimate partner violence has increased significantly. Mental health issues can affect women and men differently. Depression and anxiety are more common in women than men. Some disorders are unique to women. For example, some women may experience symptoms of mental disorders at times of hormone changes, such as perinatal depression, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and perimenopause-related depression. Couple these normal body changes of women that women may experience in life with a complete disrupt of life, and you get a recipe for a major mental health crisis. Abusive relationships, again, I say, are on the rise for women. Physical, mental, verbal, emotional, and sexual abuse that an individual may experience from someone they are in a relationship with, marriage, son, daughter, girl, or boyfriend, etc. We have seen an increase here at the college as well. And so those coupled with all of the stress, the fear, and anxiety causes for a mental health crisis within a major crisis. John, next slide. So some signs and symptoms of mental health crisis: persistent sadness or feelings of hopelessness. And we know we all can feel sad at times, but this means being sad for long periods of time and feeling like there is no hope and there is no way out. Misuse of alcohol and or drugs. There was a report a couple of months back that there was an increase in alcohol consumption, that the sales at our ABC stores in North Carolina was up. Dramatic changes in eating or sleeping habits. It's okay to have comfort food during this time, but to change dramatically in how you eat and how you sleep, insomnia or sleeping too much. Dramatic changes in everyday routines. We know that happened for many of us. Appetite and or weight changes. Decreased energy or fatigue. Excessive fear or worry. How many of us sit and watch the news all day long and it changes from 1 minute to the next? It causes a lot of anxiety and stress as well. Seeing or hearing things that are not there. I call that my definition of fear, which is false evidence appearing real. Extremely high and low moods. At 1 minute, they're extremely happy, excited. The next minute, you're feeling low and trodden and like there's no hope. Aches, headaches, or digestive problems without a clear cause, and irritability, and then suicidal thoughts. Next slide. So how do you protect yourself from mental health issues during COVID-19? One, make a daily routine and stick to it. Don't just roll out of bed and if you're working from home and log onto the computer, or if you're going to class, and I think Georgette mentioned before, cut the camera on so people can see you. Put your makeup on, do your hair. Create boundaries when working from home. Don't work at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. Have a schedule again and stick to it. so that you have a clear, concise time of when you cut things off. Limit the amount of time that you spend watching the news. The news can be very detrimental to all of us. Stop watching the news. Take it down to one time a day, and then watch a reputable media source as well. Modify your time on social media. A lot of us spend a lot of time on social media, Facebook, Instagram, those sites. They're all well and good to be connected with people during this time of social isolation. However, you can get a lot of negative information there as well. So modify the amount of time that you spend there. Maintain a regular sleep schedule. If you typically would go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, then go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. Don't stay up to 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. just because you don't have to leave the house the next day. Maintain a fitness routine and a healthy eating regimen. The gyms were closed for a minute, and many people found other ways to exercise. Taking hikes to some of our state parks now, walks around the local parks here, just getting outside and finding some type of fitness routine. Next, journal. Some people say journal is kind of cliche, but it's one of my go-tos. Journal when you're feeling low, and then write in what got you to that place so that you can see what the routine is. You don't have to journal every day. Just journal those feelings during this pandemic. Find a new hobby you can do from home. I like to craft, and I have made numerous things during this time, as well as restain the table. So do something you typically would not have done. And then if it comes to that point, seek counseling. It's okay to go and talk to someone. That person is an unbiased person who doesn't know you. They are there to listen to you, to offer suggestions, to connect you with other resources outside of that realm. Next slide. John, okay, thanks. Okay, so how can we help you here at the Shuvet Women's Center at Forsyth Tech? We offer a safe space. When you come to us, it is a confidential resource. We have counseling supports. There are 2 counselors in our office, Katie Wall and Richard Watkins. We also can refer you to community supports and resources, and we will make that transition for you and make that contact so that it's smooth, and we get you with someone that we know is going to care for you in the way that you need. And then reach out to Forsyth Tech Cares. The college has resources available for you, many resources that are there to help you. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is James Wright, and I'm a psychology instructor here for the college. And number one, thanks to all of my students for being here today. Hopefully everything is going good for you. Thanks to everybody else for being here. And on the back end, thank you to John and ITS and everybody. So let's just get down to it, and let's make our time kind of scoot along here. So as you can see up here, it kind of looks like a roadmap. I've got a lot of colors, I've got a lot of words, and believe it or not, we can actually talk about this in about 5 minutes. So when I was looking at the question that I got, which was how does social thinking, influence, and behavior affect mental health, I thought of what I have here on the bottom. Okay, his name was Albert Bandura, and his idea was triadic reciprocal causation. Now that's a mouthful of words. Let's break it down. Triadic means 3. Reciprocal means things kind of work with and around and for each other. And causation, well, it's kind of how it works. I also saw something called determinism, but I'm going to use causation because that makes a little bit more sense. So we've got 3 things: person factors, behavior factors, environmental factors. These are 3 different things that more or less interact with each other, and they affect not only the person, but also the person and their mental health as well. So as you can see, let's just take a look here. Person factors. Number 1, mental tools, right? How do people cope with things? Do people, like was just mentioned, do they journal? Do they craft? Do they do whatnot? Mental processes, their emotions, right? How do people handle things? How do people work with that? And then there's mental pitfalls, which involves anxiety, right? Some people are just kind of naturally anxious about things. Some people try to more or less kind of put things on the shelf and they forget things altogether. And that's where anxiety can really, really, really kind of creep in. So the next big thing up here are different behavior factors altogether. And think of behavior factors as more or less things like what do, what we select to pay attention to, and how we respond, right? And this is kind of like with what we select to pay attention to. This was like the stuff about, was also mentioned by some earlier presenters, things like social media. In social psychology, I often talk about the fact that many people don't realize just how much of their life can be controlled by whatever they see on this or on a computer screen. And we can simply choose to pay attention to certain things. Or the beautiful thing is, we can just turn it off. We can turn it off and we can look at the trees. We can look at a friend. We can look at a person, right? The physical, the real, and the here. So person factors are going to be one kind of thing in this three. Behavior factors, the second thing in the three. And then finally over here, environmental factors, right? Social environment, physical environment, and personal agency. What these mean is more or less when you think of the different kinds of social environments that people live in, think of, for example, cliques, think of friend groups, think of if people are supportive for each other, family as well. Physical environment, where do people live? Do they live in big metropolitan areas? Do they live in smaller cities? Are they more rural? And think about the kinds of trying to look at the right word, the kinds of supports that people can have based on where they live. And then finally, personal agency. What that means is more or less a person says, how much control do I feel like I have over stuff? How much control do I feel like, if I want to turn off the news, if I want to read the news, if I want to talk to a friend, do I have that? Can I do that? So we've gotten 1, 2, and 3. That's done. And remember, according to this here, number 1, number 2, and number 3 are always interacting. It's a very fluid push-pull model, and it affects the person and their mental health for the better or for the worse. These 3 factors constantly interact. Couple final questions here. How much of our mental health is due to factors external to us? Well, from looking at our roadmap up here, the answer is a lot. The environments that we're in, be it social, be it physical, the things that we go and work with as well. And finally, how do we move ahead? So to finish out my little part of the presentation today, I really want to drill down on this because, we've talked about things that are problematic, and I wouldn't want to leave you without some suggestions, right? So how do we move ahead? Well, I'm surprised how often this little board has really come in handy. So let me do that and let me do this. So everybody, if y'all were to have come to my office and say, Mr. Wright, COVID-19, I'm not feeling so great. What can I do? I would give you these. I would give you these pieces of advice. Number 1, self-care is not selfish. Self-care is absolutely not selfish. You are that important. You deserve your time, right? Number 2, seek out positive outlets. For me, it's music. For me, it's art. For me, it's going for a run, right? Number 3, feel what you feel and feel it, right? Some people feel guilty about feeling, whatever they feel. Well, no, just feel what you feel, and that's important. Next one, everything lifts. Everything eventually goes away. Everything eventually goes away, which leads to the last thing. Everything eventually ends up in the rearview mirror, right? Everything that you have faced before eventually gets behind you. And sometimes that's difficult, and sometimes that's tough. But everything eventually ends up in the rearview mirror. And finally, I've got 2 different things here. What can students use? What can they do? The Student Assistance Program, y'all, this is a great thing. 704-529-1428. There are so many things that people can use. It's free. It's confidential. Nobody will know that you used it except for you and whoever you're talking to on the phone. And then finally, for SciTech Cares, 336-734-7195. I've had so many students use for SciTech Cares. Again, it is a wonderful thing. It's paid for, and they're just resources that people can use to help them get along. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to say, for what it's worth, I'm an instructor. Ms. Howell's an instructor. Ms. Chen is an instructor. We're all here for you. We do this job for a reason. It's because we care about you and we want the best for you. And I think that's about as plain as I can say it, and it's the truth. So thank you for your time. Thank you to all my students. Thank you to everybody else who's been here, and I'll see you all later.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Professor Howell, Professor Chen, Ms. Richmond, and Professor Wright. This is some tremendous information that we have been exposed to, and hopefully we will move forward with this information, Professor Howell has a part of a PowerPoint with some of the resources that you would tap into. Also, this is being recorded, will be available hopefully very soon. There are some student questions that I have that I'm going to ask the panelists. Amy asked a question. I know with COVID-19, there is a lot of issues that can lead to depression, but do you really think the increase of depression is truly due to just COVID-19? Any of the panelists can answer that question. I know with COVID-19, there's a lot of issues that can lead to depression, but do you really think the increase of depression is truly due to just COVID-19?
I'll throw in, I would say not really. I mean, people deal with things, and people have been dealing with things long before COVID-19 was a thing. Like was mentioned in Ms. Richmond's thing, people deal with situations at home, and that's way before COVID ever happened. That doesn't change, and people can sometimes get a sense of what's called learned helplessness. It's like my environment is my environment. I've tried changing, nothing works, or I believe that it can't change. So, people can suffer from depression and anxiety, sometimes even in the absence of anything in their environment. They have a chemical imbalance, and their brain works in certain ways. So, it's unfortunate, but my take is that, yeah, it's probably it's due to a lot of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Wright.
Yes, sir.
Tariq asked the question, what are some ways that one can help with feelings of being depressed due to isolation during COVID-19? What are some ways that one can help with feelings of being depressed due to isolation during COVID-19?
Walter,
May I
this is Kenyatta. Oh, go ahead,
Okay.
Georgette.
I was going to say you can also help yourself by learning something new. A lot of us, we love to eat. Learn how to cook. You may not even realize that this is something you want to do, but after you have 5 days of chicken, fried and bake, fried and bake, fried and bake, you can come up with anything on the internet. They go step by step in making wonderful dishes, wonderful desserts. Learn something new. Read something that you didn't even imagine that you cared anything for. Cut that television off. Do some exercises. You can always do something else while we're on a lockdown.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chen. Hey, question. What has statistics showed about addiction during COVID-19? What has show about addiction during COVID-19? And I believe, Professor Wright, that was one of the questions that you shared
Yeah.
with us.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in real quick so we can keep cycling through this here. I don't want to, take up what other people could say as well. They might want to throw in too. I mean, up increases. I was reading statistics where the average life expectancy in the US had been going down due to the ongoing opioid crisis, and then it kind of started to trend up again. But once COVID-19 happened, people can do things like self-medicate, and they unfortunately overdose, right? Um, substance abuse, alcohol, addiction is up as well, and it's almost like a perfect storm. I've been looking at the different chat messages here. There's so many things happening right now: political system, environmental issues, social causes. It's no wonder some people that on top of the environments they may live in, that they go to a bottle, they go to a needle, they go to whatever they go to, and some people don't survive. Just to pay tribute to him, I lost a friend that way. He unfortunately had a lot of stuff going on. It was before COVID-19, but it was the same kind of problems, and he got messed up in some stuff, and he's gone. And some people just, yeah, it's all right. I miss him. I wish he was still here. But it's just one of those things where, and I hate it because people, they if they could have just like stuck around, you know. But yeah, long story short, consumption up, overdoses up, calls up, EMS. It's unfortunate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Professor Wright. Um, Mr. Howell has a couple of questions from the chat room that he would like to share with us.
Hi, everybody. This first question from the chat for any of the panelists: how can you help defeat the mental health stigma and encourage understanding within your community? How can you help defeat the mental health stigma and encourage understanding within your community?
I'll take it. I think for me as an African American woman, I think it's important to discuss mental health issues, to discuss the stigma and where it has come from and why we feel that way, and then to encourage others to get the assistance they need, the therapy and the counseling, and that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I think a lot of times it's things that we've been taught by our grandparents and family members in our community and our culture, that it's not okay to tell your personal business to other people. It's not okay to admit that you have an issue or you have a problem. But the more that we talk about it, I think the more that people are aware that it's okay. There is nothing wrong with it, but it's most important to get the assistance that you need. And so there are all types of resources out there specific for different cultures when it comes down to stigmas, and it comes down to getting assistance around mental health issues. As an African American woman, there are resources for Black women who are seeking specific types of counselors and therapists. So there's help out there, and I think it's important to talk about it and not, I think back in the day you say what goes on at home stays at home. We don't want that to happen. Let's have those discussions about these health issues.
And may I piggyback off Miss Richmond? She is so right. The African American community has always pulled our wagons around a mental health family member, and we didn't want the neighbors to know. Miss Richmond is so right. We don't tell our business. We're living in a different day, a different age, where you can go and talk to somebody and it's not a stigma. It won't come back to hurt you later. The fact that you are brave enough to speak with someone is a bigger and a more helpful part of your life than you sitting there bottling it in, and the wagons are circled around you, and your mom and dad, it will embarrass them with the neighbors. It's a different age. We can go and get help now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen. Mr. Howell, do you have another question?
Yes, Professor Brickhouse. The other two questions, though, were about resources. What should one do if? And actually, this question was directed to Professor Wright. Professor Wright, what should one do if one finds oneself in a mental health crisis?
Yeah, I can think of a couple things. And matter of fact, the student assistance program I mentioned on my little board right here. That's one of the things. Also, Forsyth Tech Cares is another big thing as well. And I'll say this, that there's been a couple times when I've had students that were in a problem and they needed help like right then and there. And I said, you know, we can go right over to the Sugar Women's Center. I will go right with you and I'll see you to there. Or, you know, we can go over to the Strickland Center where Student Services is at, and we can go right there. Exactly. Forsyth Tech, Kristen said it, certified counselors. Dean Williams has given her email address, awilliams@forsythtech.edu, and she has an amazing amount of resources she can put people into touch with. There's a lot of stuff here, right? It's like, you know, when you shake the tree and a lot of good stuff starts falling out, you don't really know what's there until you start shaking. Well, you know, ask people. Send an email, give a phone call, you know, and as Professor Tandon said, the resources that we've been talking about, they'll be posted in a way that students can look at. So there's all kinds of stuff here, and your individual instructors that you have, you can start that line there, and they'll know, you know, things to work with as.
Thank you so much.
I want to add to what James just said. Although we are working virtually, the counselors, which are actually now under the Women's Center, and they won't be in Strickland anymore, so we're changing geographically, and we'll be sharing that information. But although we're not on campus physically, we are coming to campus, and somebody will be there at all times. We had an incident yesterday. We got a call from someone on campus, and someone came directly to campus to support that student. So we are available, and we'll be there at the drop of the hat. Although we're not physically on campus, we're there, and we are doing Zoom counseling sessions. Ms. Wall and Mr. Watkins have full loads right now, and they are there to help and assist. So we are available. Although you don't see us, we are here.
Thank you so much. Another question that has been asked is, how should someone deal with panic attacks while being isolated and by themselves? How should someone deal with panic attacks while being isolated and by themselves?
I can take that one if you want.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Howell.
One of the best things that you can do in a situation like that is to focus, to practice your breathing, to do what we call a 10 count breath is a really easy way to start with that, where you quietly in your head or out loud, you count to 10. You can also practice what we call mindfulness, which is grounding yourself in the moment. Pay attention to what is around you. Look for sights, listen for sounds, smell for smells, use all of your senses, and you try to pay attention to what you are doing right at that very moment and keep yourself in the moment. The biggest thing is to try to relax as much as possible during that time. And when you are feeling better and when you're feeling a little bit more in control, that would be a good time to use some of these resources and call for assistance. Again, yeah, meditation is really big. It is more than anything just focusing on yourself at that moment and not focusing on the stressors around you, and just getting yourself back into kind of a grounded position.
Thank you so much, Professor Howell. A question that we have from Cameron is, how does social distancing from the world affect people with mental health? How does social distancing from the world affect people with mental health? Any of our panelists care to address that?
I'll throw in, for some people, when it,
Yes,
of
sir.
course, yes, sir. For some people, when it comes to social distancing, that's kind of the lifestyle they've been leading prior. So as far as feeling distance, they might not. For other people that maybe are naturally more extroverted or have been in professions where they interact with a lot of people, social distancing and kind of the requisite closing down maybe of a restaurant or a bar can impact them a lot, and that they find themselves really missing that that connection that can have with other people. So I've had students in class will say, yeah, before COVID-19 happened, I was kind of a loner, and so this is not really much of a change for me. Other people have said, I'm talking to the walls, because I need interaction. I'm just looking here. Yeah, Tessa, it would depend on the person, and what they naturally, we all have different needs for social interaction. We all have different needs for, how much time with other people that we can enjoy. And for some people, they need a lot. For other people, a little bit, and they're good. So it can also be kind of back to some stuff that we mentioned there about how people cope, what people have to cope with, and what they're comfortable with.
Thank you so much, Professor Wright. This is a question for Michael. Has there been any clinical trials or studies being conducted to rate how many people have been impacted negatively during COVID-19, and if those persons are self-medicating? Has there been any clinical trials or studies being conducted to rate how many people have been impacted negatively during COVID-19, and if those persons are self-medicating? Professor Howell has a screen up negative impacts on mental health and well-being. in adults? And Professor Howell, would that also apply to college-age students?
It would. This was a study that was done on college age students, and so this was from the Kaiser Foundation looking at mental health impacts across our college age and young adult students. And so this is just a couple of statistics on that, but yes, it's a high impact. And certainly self-medication, there's a 12% reported increase. It's probably higher than that. And with most of these, it's probably higher than this, but this is of the people that were pooled.
Thank you so much, Professor Howell.
Mm-hmm.
Jelani in the chat room has said, how do those with medical issues that prevents them from wearing a mask use tools on campus such as tutoring, test prepping, etc.? How do those with medical issues that prevents them from wearing a mask use tools on campus such as tutoring, test prepping, etc.?
A lot of our stuff is virtual.
Okay.
Some of the, like let me click the video on, a lot of our psychology tutoring is virtual now. Just like Ms. Richmond mentioned, a lot of their resources are virtual, and people can come to campus at the drop of a hat if need be. And I've often had people say, I'd like to get tutoring, but I'd also I can't wear a mask. So there is that virtual option. Now, Amanda just wrote, you can use a shield instead of a mask. So there are options that people can use.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Wright. Mr. Howell has a couple of questions that he would like to share with us.
Yes, this next one for the panel, how can you approach professors about mental health problems you're experiencing while maintaining privacy? Again, that's how can you approach professors, or how would you recommend students to approach professors about mental health problems you're experiencing while maintaining privacy?
Come in during their office hours.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Becky.
I was going to say most professors have office hours. You can either visit virtually or you can come into their offices. You can also send them an email and simply ask them if they could call you, and they certainly can reach out in that way. And I'll let Georgette also chime in here.
Well, Becky, I was going to say basically the same thing. When our classes were face-to-face, and we still have some that are face-to-face, just hang back, tell the instructor, I need to speak with you alone. More than likely, they'll close the door, or they'll at least leave it ajar, so you can speak with them on that one-on-one basis. We're not going to run out here and discuss anything that has been discussed between a student and a teacher. We don't do that. And from there, the teacher may be able to direct you in the right department. It's so many good ones on campus. And maybe just speaking with the instructor will do you a lot of good. And of course, again, there's always the virtual or the Skype collaboratory. As long as you can see their face, that's always good.
Georgette, can I add one thing to what you just said? Although the instructors may keep the information you share in private and confidential, however, if you disclose that you are going to harm yourself or harm anyone else, they do have a duty to report, and they will have to contact someone, because you have to protect you and protect the others that may be in harm's way as well. And I just want to throw that out there, because I don't want students to think that, I shared this and then they call somebody in and they broke the confidence of them. That's not the case. They're trying to make sure that you are okay, and anybody that you have threatened is okay as well.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Richmond.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen. Thank you, Ms. Richmond. I'd like to thank each one of our panelists, Professor Howell, Professor Chen, Ms. Richmond, and Professor Wright. Thank you so much. This has been a very informative panel and discussion, and it is very timely. At this time, I'd like to bring on Dr. Jewel Cherry. She is the Vice President of Equity and Educational Support Services here at Forsyth Tech. Dr. Cherry.
Thank you, Mr. Brickhouse. I am trying to get my camera to work, but I don't seem to be able to, so you guys will just have to hear me, I guess.
It's working. It's working.
Oh, it is working? Okay,
Yes.
great. So this has been a very, very powerful experience today, and I have certainly enjoyed and appreciated being a part of it. I would like to say a very big thank you to our panelists, to Mrs. Howell and Professor Chin, Ms. Richmond, and Professor Wright. I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for bringing your expertise to us today. I'm also going to say really a big thank you to all of the students that are participating in today's event. It's really, really encouraging to know that we have students that are so interested in learning more about their mental health and how not only to help themselves, but also to help their friends and family. So it's just been a really powerful experience. As Professor Tandon said earlier, we started Courageous Conversations back in June as a result of what was happening in our bigger world in the situation of the murder of George Floyd. We realized that there were people that were hurting and that they were needing and wanting an opportunity to express that. And so Courageous Conversations was created to acknowledge, first of all, the pain, but also to give them a place that they could share. And we are extremely pleased to be able to partner with other activities around campus, and certainly joining with the Humanities series is a big part of our continuing to share information and to give people an opportunity to acknowledge situations that may be difficult to talk about. And so thank you all for the questions that you asked today. I thought they were really powerful and really good questions. I want to encourage you the resources were up, and I'm sure that they'll put them back up. But again, this session is recorded, so you might want to share it with someone else. We encourage you to do that as well. But again, I just want to say thank you for continuing for participating today. And I encourage you to look out for other events that may be happening on campus as we are partnering with others to keep the Courageous Conversations going. So Courageous Conversations would be nothing without your participation. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your willingness to participate today. And thank you, Mr. Brickhouse, for giving me the opportunity to speak.
You are more than welcome. Thank you, Dr. Cherry. At this time, if the panelists would like to stick around, there are some questions that Mr. Howell has that the answers will be a part of the recording that will take place. We could get a few more minutes from the panelists and Mr. Howell read those questions. That way they can be a part of the recording that will be posted at a later time.
Yes, here is the first question. It was asked by two different people, but it's sort of the questions sort of go hand in hand. Perhaps Ms. Richmond, this would be a great one for you. Again, where can students go for counseling on campus, and is it free?
Okay. Yes, counseling is free on campus. They can contact the Sugar Women's Center's main number to make an appointment with one of the counselors, Katie Wall or Richard Watkins. They will get up to 3 sessions with one of them, sometimes a little bit more depending on the situation with the student. And at that point, we assess the student and then refer them to outside resources that they can actually either pay for on a sliding fee scale, or Medicaid might cover, or are free.
Thank you, Ms. Richmond. Our next question would be for any panelists who'd like to speak to social anxiety. What are some strategies? What do you feel are some of the best strategies to deal with any social anxiety that's really been exacerbated throughout COVID?
John, this is Kenyatta again. So I'll speak I'll talk about me basically. So I'm an extrovert, and when this pandemic hit, I was actually at a conference for my sorority, and it shut down. We were sent back home. So like my daily routine and after work routines changed drastically as far as, community organizations I was involved in, meetings and of what such. And so for the first few months, I was just trying to figure out, what do I do? So a couple things that I have ventured out and tried was utilizing the platforms that we have of Zoom and all of that. And so around April, a group of me and my girlfriends, some live in Houston and DC, we scheduled Zoom sessions, which we thought we were going to be out of this by May, but we're still doing it. We scheduled Zoom sessions for every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., and they're scheduled to the end of the year. And so that puts me in contact with people that I'm not able to see and touch. We have a subject that we talk about every Wednesday. And so now we're September, we started in April. Like, I'm excited every Wednesday night because that's some of my social interaction with others. And then looking to see what's out there that you can go and do from a social distance standpoint. I've had the opportunity to do some volunteer work in places, but also maintaining the CDC protocols as well. So just figuring out some small things that you can do to kind of deal with that anxiety has been great, and it's worked for me. So
Great, thank you again, Ms. Richmond. Another question we had, would any of the panelists be able to bring up some information on genetic mental disorders and or provide some links to resources on those? Would anybody like to speak to that?
Do you know which ones? Genetic could be a lot of things. This can go all the way from bipolar and schizophrenia to things like Down syndrome. It's a fairly broad topic here.
The question was sort of about in general. Let's see. The question was asked by Brenna, I believe. Brenna, would you like to put in the chat here anything you'd like to specifically hear about?
No, I was also going to say with what Ms. Howell mentioned that it is a pretty big range of disorders that can have a genetic component to it. So it's like Brenna said, bipolar and schizophrenia. Ms. Howell, would you like to chip in?
Okay, so what was the question concerning that? Where to look for that information? Or just about genetics in general and how much of a concordance rate there is?
I think that would be a great place to start, Professor Howell. Yes.
Sure. For bipolar disorder, it has a very strong genetic link to it. It can be up to 20% genetic possibility, but remember that these are predispositions. It does not mean that if somebody in your family has it, that someone else doesn't. Schizophrenia, if you look at identical twins, you can move up closer to 50% concordance rate, which means that you have a 50% getting it if your identical twin also has it. And it's about a 20% if you are looking at a first-degree parent relative. They do find that they run in families, but you have to remember that it is not 100%. Genetics are one of many components of what causes disorders, but it is not 100% that that's what causes disorders. Unless we are looking at something like Down syndrome, which is a trisomy on the 23rd chromosome, and that is completely genetic. But most of our mental health conditions are not genetic disorders that are specifically 100% genetic.
Great. I have another question from the chat box. Do y'all have any recommendations on how to balance dealing with TBI side effects and our current COVID surroundings and environment? Again, TBI side effects and our current COVID climate.
Wow, these are really good questions. They're very specific. Traumatic brain injury is another potential cause for um, any of our mental health conditions. And if somebody else wants to chime in, go for it. But as you're dealing with any side effects of any of these disorders or any kind of previous injuries, whether we're talking about a brain injury or if we're talking about something like PTSD, it is certainly something that if nothing else, take really good care of yourself more now than ever. Take very good care of yourself physically. Make sure that you're getting plenty of fresh air, plenty of sleep, that you're eating well, that you are keeping hydrated. Sometimes we forget to do that one, and it has major negative effects on us. With all of our disorders, the better you take care of your physical self, the better your mental self is going to be. You have to remember that it is a mind-body connection. It is not simply that, okay, it's all about my emotions. It's about the whole package.
Very good. And one other question from before. If someone has, and of course, Professor Howell, I'll refer everybody to your wonderful resources here, but if someone has been through a traumatic event and they're just having a difficult time, what resources would you recommend they turn to first? Maybe you and Ms. Richmond can address this.
You said what resources they can go to first? Was that the question, John?
Yes. Yeah. If they're having a difficult time moving past a traumatic event. Yeah.
So they can make an appointment to come to our office. We're going to do an assessment to kind of find out, what was the traumatic experience. Ask them questions about have they had previous assistance, if they've seen a therapist or counselor in the area, and then move from that point. Depending upon what it is, we will probably refer them out for additional services from another agency or organization.
Yeah, and on the screen here, I have the Student Assistance Program, which is something they can call that is done through our HR department that is now open for all students for the next year. And they can call in here and get assistance for all sorts of different things, including counseling and certainly any other issues that they might have going on right now. And this is free to all students. We're also going to attach a local mental health page here. I can give you just a quick glimpse of it at the moment. But this is also a page that's got all of the resources in the county and the surrounding areas as far as where they can go for crisis services, for substance abuse, for specific mental health resources outside of Forsyth Tech as well. So Forsyth Tech's a perfect start for it, but we certainly have outside resources that are available for students as well. Though anything outside, there could potentially be a charge for those.
Great, and y'all, that was the end of the questions from the chat. So panelists, thank y'all so much. Thank you so much for that, Professor Brickhouse. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
I think we may have lost Walter again.
Yes, it looks like that. Well, thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry. What I did was I mistakenly X'd out my mic. I wanted to stop talking. But Professor Tandon, unless you have something to say, we are done.
Yes, we are done. Thank you all who stayed behind for this presentation. I hope you found it helpful. I can see some questions are still pouring in, and at the moment I am not very sure, but maybe we'll have some kind of a follow-up. We will have some kind of a support that will be set up. I really never realized when we started working on this that this would be such, I anticipated it would be successful. But I can see your questions. Some of those have not been answered. We'll see some way of reaching out. You already know who your professors are. Feel free to reach out to them in privacy. And thank you very much for coming in today. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye. Take care. Stay safe.